Well, a happy Monday morning to you. They say we might get a little snow tonight. Well, we'll see. The weatherman, they take a good guess at things, but they often guess wrong. But we'll see. You know, I intend to go driving, regardless, unless it gets really dangerous. In which case, I'll just come home and put my feet up in my recliner and binge on something worthy of binging on Netflix. That'll be my plan. As you know, I've changed my format a little bit. I'm just telling real news, real things, real Maine stories, real things that actually happened. This part is the one I'm doing today is coming in two parts. One is a story about my uncle that actually took place about probably 40 years ago. Actually, it was more than 50 years ago. And the other one was one that I found in CNN News. You know, I actually do read CNN News once in a while, just found out what the enemy's doing, you know. First part is the story I'll tell you about my uncle. It was back in the 60s and 70s. He got into this metal detecting thing. It's quite a hobby. He got into one of the early metal detectors, you know, one of the first ones that came out that was for consumers, you know, and it had headphones, you know, kind of close himself off from the outside world, and he'd go along the beaches down there and around, you know, the Portland area, and he'd go down to Old Orchard Beach and especially those places, you know, where he'd find all kinds of things. And back then, he told me that his nemesis were those aluminum flip top cannons that they'd used back when in the old days when they invented those things, because the flip top would come right off. You see, you'd open your can with that little ring, you pull it open, and the flip top would flip right off, and it was an environmental hazard. They eventually invented the flip tops that you know, the can, you open the can, and the thing that, you know, opens the mouth opening for you to drink stays in the can, and that's much better environmentally. But he said he found thousands upon thousands of those things because they'd beep on his metal detector, and he'd think he'd found a coin or something, you know, and he'd go digging down, and there's another one of them expletive deleted flip top aluminum things, you know. He built himself a little device. It was a Bakelite bowl, you know. This is before plastics had really come into their own. They were just starting to make plastic things, but this was if you knew about Bakelite, you can look it up. It's Bakelite, and it's like plastic, but it's not quite plastic. And he drilled it full of holes so that he could dig in the sand and then sift it. You know, he's a pretty inventive guy, and it was hard enough so that he could actually dig, and then he'd sift and see what he got. And I was over to his house one day, and he had built himself a plywood board with a nail, probably about every 2 inches, all across that board. And every single nail was filled all the way out with rings that he had found. Can you believe that? All kinds of rings, just class rings, wedding rings, just decorative rings, and just amazing. He never really did find anything of value. He subscribed to the hobbyist magazines that went around, you know, with that. I don't know the name of it, but it had something to do with with the hobby, as you would if you was into scuba diving. You'd subscribe to a scuba diving magazine, of course. You know, skin diving, snorkeling, you'd subscribe to one of them magazines. If you know a fellow like me, you subscribe to, as I do. I don't subscribe to it, but they keep sending it to me. What's the name of that thing? They call it the Old Timers magazine. I forget what they call it. Just never mind. But one day, I think he was down on the beach in Massachusetts. He did live in Worcester. He got transferred from his job in Service Master, which was the hospital cleaning division of Service Master cleaning organization. And so he was doing some of the beaches down in that area. And he found a high school ring, and it had the year on it. It was about 20 some odd years old, and it had the initials that were etched on the inside of the ring. He thought, wouldn't it be get a kick out of being able to return that to the original owner, you know? And so he thought he'd do that. He thought he'd try it, So he went to the high school that I forget which high school it was, but he went to the high school and said, I found this ring on the beach, and it sure would be fun if I could find the owner. Would you mind looking up his initials? I'm not trying to violate anybody's privacy, and people were a lot more friendly back, 40, 50 years ago. And they said, sure, let's see what we can find in the records, and they found out there was a woman that had those initials. I said, we have any idea where she lives, really, but we'll see what we can do. So they did a little detective work, and they found out that they actually gave them their address. Can you imagine people doing that today? They wouldn't even think of it. There's just too many kooks in the world. But they gave him what they thought was probably her address. And so he went up to there, knocking on the door, and he said, my name's David Airy. And I think, he showed her the ring. I think I found this ring that you lost on the beach. And she's like, she was astounded. She said, I lost that beach on that ring 20 years ago. And she was just like, she was astounded, delighted. She was it was just unbelievable. She was so happy to get her high school ring back. She never thought that she'd ever see it again. And, she wanted to offer a reward. And he's like, no. Just, the fact that your reaction to that ring, that's good enough for me. I'm just, I've got a story to tell now, and that's good enough for me. That's all the reward I ever needed. And he walked away, and he had a happy story to tell. And so that goes right along with the news story that I'm going to read to you from a CNN that I found online. And I do need a little bit of wet my whistle here from my good Maine mug that my brother-in-law, John, gave me. And again, I say thank you, John, for my Maine mug. And I'll wet my whistle here before I tell the next part of the story. Hang on. There's nothing like a good cup of Maine coffee. There just ain't nothing like it in the whole world. The title of this is A Woman's Class Ring That She Lost in Maine in 1973 was just found buried in a forest in Finland. Now that beats my uncle's story all to heck. You couldn't believe it. And the byline is from CNN and says, if only rings could talk. Nearly 50 years after a woman lost her boyfriend's class ring in a Maine department store, it turned up buried 6 inches deep in the floor of a forest in Finland. Can you imagine this? Quote, I was shocked and didn't really believe that it could be his. This is the woman talking now. I needed to see it. Deborah McKenna, the owner of the ring, told CNN of the surprise discovery. Quote, how could it be so far away? The man who found it was just as excited. But the story of how the ring journeyed from 1973 Maine to 2020 Finland is a mystery. And it truly is. Nobody has a clue of how it got buried 6 inches deep in a forest in Finland. That's truly a mystery, and there's just no answer. There's not even any theories. Nobody's got a clue. The ring's journey began in Portland, Maine in 1973. It belonged to her high school boyfriend, Sean, according, he told the Bangor Daily News, and he gave it to her before he left Morse High School for college. Ain't that sweet? And I guess he was a little older than her, and so he wanted her to, be, kind of something to remember her by so that she wouldn't go away. I'm leaving for college, dear. I'm leaving you my high school ring. We're not engaged, but we're still girlfriend, boyfriend. That's how you kind of lock in your girlfriend that you're going to leave back home. See? Smart. And, but, she lost it after he left, when she removed it to wash her hands at an apartment store in Portland. Quote, it wasn't there when I went back, and it was only just minutes, McKenna told CNN. And that was the last I saw of it. So she set it aside on, the wash basin in the department store. And then she realized, oh my goodness, I lost my ring. And she went back and it was gone. She was upset, but he, the boyfriend, didn't care. That's a nice boyfriend. He's a forgiving sort of fella, you know. Ultimately, it didn't matter, according to the story. The couple married in 1977 and stayed together for 40 years until he passed away in 2017 after a 6-year battle with cancer. And that's kind of a sad part of this story. He told Portland, this kind of that part of the printing that I did, Portland Bangor News, I guess, that she thought she'd never see the ring again, but then Marco Sharinin went on a hunt for historic items in January, I guess, with a metal detector, or whatever. That's the guy that's in Finland. And somewhere between 1973 and this past January, the ring crossed the Atlantic Ocean for Finland. And again, nobody's got a clue how this happened or why it happened. Sharinin, and that's with 2 A's, Saarine, and I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that correctly because I'm not Finnish. He's a 38-year-old sheet worker, came across an item that he figured must have been a toy from a vending machine. A few hours a week, Sharinin enjoyed looking for historic items in a nearby forest in Kareena, which also has 2 A's, Kareena, Finland, with his metal detector, and such discoveries are rather uncommon. He usually finds old coins, musket balls, trash, or bottle caps, but nothing too valuable. Sounds like my uncle. But when he took a closer look, he quickly realized it was slightly more authentic than a toy, I guess. The markings on the ring, Morse High School, and the year 1973, and the initials SM, gave him clues that he'd need to try to track down the owner. Sharinin posted a photo of the ring to the Morse High School Class of 1973 Facebook page and quickly received a response. The alumni group had no trouble finding the original owner. It was Sean McKenna, Deborah's high school boyfriend. Now, ain't that something? That just tickles me pink. It really does. And we had no other males in the class with those initials. One of the administrators of the class Facebook page, Kathleen Nadeau, told CNN. I believe there were about 216 of us. It wasn't that big a high school. And there was a female in our class with the same initials, but from the photos we knew it was a man's ring. Sharinin didn't think twice to mail it back to where he belonged. That's a good man. He was just happy to have made the find. Again, sounds like my uncle, you know. This has to be my best amazing discovery yet. Best yet, he said. Deborah, for her part, is glad that the ring found its way home. She believes the discovery was a message from her husband that is still with her. Now, ain't that touching? So this was several years after her husband had died. And magically, just like magic, a part of her husband that had been given to her in 1973. Let's see now. He died in 1970. Let's see. He died after they married in 1977. 40 years later, so that's 2017. So 2017, he had passed away. 3 years later, she gets his old high school ring back. Now that just got to touch his soul. It really does. So she says she thinks that discovery was a message from her husband, and it's still with her. Quote, I was feeling a little lost for a bit, and now I feel like, okay, he's letting me know that things are good, that the decision I'm making right now, and he's behind me on it, like he's been through my whole life. Ain't that romantic? I just love it. I think that's just, like I say, this ain't a funny story, but it's a true one. And it's about rings. When the pastor, when they do the uniting of the wedding rings, he says it represents the eternal bond between the married couple. And ain't that something that she got her old boyfriend's high school ring back? I just think that's just a wonderful story. It's so romantic. It just gives me chills. And I hope you enjoy the story. And I'll keep looking for these sorts of things. And some of them's going to be funny, and well, some of them will be kind of romantic, and some of them will be kind of mysterious. This one has some romance and mystery in it. So I hope you enjoyed it. And if it's snowing, stay safe out there, okay? All right. And God bless you.